Hi, it's Anna Runkle here, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy. And last week I talked about reframing your life story by putting the traumatic things that happened to you in one column and then some of the good things that also happened to you in another column. And that way you can choose if you want to identify not just with the trauma but also with the good stuff. And a lot of you posted your lists of good things from your childhood, the people who helped you, the happy memories, because they're also part of your life story. And it was really emotional for me to read these testaments to your resilience. But one person asked, what do you do when there isn't anyone to put on the plus side of the column? And she said that she had no good teachers, no good adults in the picture, and the small amount of good experiences were not really that significant. And then she asked, what do you do with that? And I wrote a long answer to her, and then I thought, let's just make this a post for everybody. So, what do you do with the really bad memories and hard cases? And I want to first acknowledge that some people really do get dealt a terrible hand in this life, and some people are experiencing hardships and injustices right now as I speak. And that's real. And if that's you, then promise me you'll take action to get yourself to a safe space today. But for most of us, the bad thing is not happening right now. Bad things may have happened in the past, and we may be struggling today on the inside as a result, but most of us are safe right now from the outside traumas. And that means we have freedom at last to start rebuilding our lives. Now, there was a time in my life when this was very hard for me to see. And it was back in the earlier mid-2000s, like starting in 2004. Many of you have heard the story in other videos I've made. I was newly divorced. I had 2 little kids. I lost all my income. I ended up with a serious medical problem that had me in and out of the hospital with dozens of trips to the emergency room and going weeks sometimes without any help from friends or family. I was isolated, I was angry, and I was very, very alone. I'd given up my daily practice where I write fears and resentments and then meditate, which I show everybody on my blog and on videos. And I gave it up because I was just thinking, like, what good has it done me? What is the point? And I went and saw a therapist for a while, but it just left me more upset each time after I saw her. So what I'm saying is it was a bad time, and there were a whole bunch of other bad things at this time, so many that I don't even want to rehash it all right now. But this went on for 4 years, and I'd given up. I felt like there was a curse on me, and I could not see how things were going to possibly get better for me. And then it happened. I had a big shift. And this led over the next year or two to me getting back into my daily practice again and back to full healing on the body level and in my life. So how did this happen? It started with a single thought. I was meditating and it just came to me out of the blue that as bad as all my problems were, they were common problems for people all over the world throughout all time. And I was sick of feeling sorry for myself. And I thought maybe the best way to get my mind off my own problems might be to think of someone else's problems for a while. Maybe I could be helpful to someone else. So I made this silent commitment to myself that I would take action on this, if only to make myself feel better. And I would find a way to be helpful to someone with worse troubles than I had. And then, within a couple of days, I found myself chatting to a stranger on a street corner. And this guy happened to be a Catholic priest. He was from Kenya, and he happened to mention that there had recently been a terrible mass killing in his home country. This all happened after an election that was disputed, and about 1,000 people had been killed, and many, many more had been maimed or burned very, very badly. And among the burned people were the children from 2 families who this priest had come to know. And the kids who were burned were sent by the Kenyan government to the United States, and they were living near us with their mothers. But their other family members, the siblings, one of the dads, they were trapped back in Kenya. They had no visa to come to the U.S. They'd lost everything. They had no money. They could never go home again, where the genocide had happened, and they were living in refugee camps where one of the kids had died. And they were deeply, deeply traumatized, the whole family. And because I'd made that decision to try to help someone else, I asked the priest, his name was Father James, if there was something I could do to help. And he asked something way too big for me. I had been thinking, write a check. And I thought, well, I could get some cash off my credit card and write a check. I can help that way. Well, it ended up being even bigger than that. He asked if I'd go with him to Kenya and track down these families and get them somewhere safe. And I'd made this commitment to myself to really do something, so I took a leap of faith and I sent my own kids to their dads for a couple weeks. And I got a boatload of vaccinations, and I bought a ticket to Nairobi on what little credit I had left on my card. I went to Africa, and oh my God, it was beautiful. It was terrifying. We were way off the beaten track in this country full of unrest and danger. And this priest, Father James, he had a way of speaking truth to power, like refusing to pay bribes to cops and calling out local leaders for their failure to help the victims of these clashes. And I'm telling you, I cried every day. I was so sure we were going to end up in a Nairobi jail or worse. And of course, I met some of the most amazing people there, and I had this incredible healing experience that I wasn't expecting. There were so many individuals I could tell you about, but I just want to tell you about this one woman. Now, like me, she was a single mom raising kids with a certain amount of fear from day to day that she wasn't going to be able to manage. She had 3 kids, and she lived with them in a huge slum outside Nairobi called Mukuru kwa Reuben. And this was in a shack about, 7 to 10 feet. There's no electricity, no water, no toilet. And the woman supported her family by growing and selling these little tomatoes that she'd sell on this clean piece of cotton cloth on the ground in the market by the roadside. So we're not talking about a very big income here. And these 3 kids, they looked to be, 6 or 8 years old, somewhere in that range, but they were older than that because they have so little to eat. The kids in the slum don't even hit puberty till they're 17 or so, and even then they don't look their age. And these kids were super into school. They were very serious about it. They were doing their homework during my visit with just a kerosene lamp on the table. Just this one little lamp to see by with no windows, so it's always dark inside. It's like kerosene smoke. And these were bright, good kids. They were polite and kind, and I gotta say, perfectly clean from top to bottom, which amazed me because right outside the door, right outside, was this soppy river of wet mud and raw sewage just running between the shacks. That is the toilet in this slum. And it's muddy, it's really slippery. And if you lose your footing out there, I'm just telling you, do not lose your footing. Because if you fall, there's cholera, there's feral pigs, there's all kinds of bad things in that mud. And all of this is to say, these kids, they had like clean legs, clean hems on their clothes and their feet. I don't know how they did it. But I left my boots at the door because the mud was just clinging to me everywhere. But these kids, they were like quietly doing their homework around this table on the floor. And they had their beds rolled up under the benches. And it was just enough room for the benches, the table, and the bedding, and enough room for 4 people to roll out their beds at night and sleep. And they had decorated the walls. The walls were like made of corrugated tin, and they had pictures that the kids had cut out from magazines or calendars of like flowers and mountains. So this family, on their little table, they had a little plastic bag with 4 pieces of white bread in it. And the bag's just folded neatly there on the table. And they offered me some. And this was their evening meal. 1 piece of bread per person. This was always my dilemma when I traveled there, is that everyone I met would offer me the best food they had, and I'd be wondering, like, is it more rude to take the food, or is it more rude to refuse the food? And in this case, I did not take the bread. So we talked, and here's the thing. This woman, this mother of 3, she'd been working with her kids, with some neighbors, on a project to raise money to build a public shower in their corner of this massive slum. And this, on top of all they were already doing just to get by. And so I asked the woman, how did she manage to do this all? And I didn't want to disrespect her, but my God, how could these little tomatoes support a family of 4? And the funny thing is, despite the extreme hardship, a lot of her problems were kind of similar to my problems. They were worse, of course, but they were similar. She felt worried a lot. She felt overwhelmed all the time. She worked really hard. She was funny, and she joked that no matter how much she did, it was just never enough. But one of the things really different about her was that she didn't have self-pity. She was dealing with her life. She made it work. She was really hopeful about this shower, in fact, and about this after-school tutoring program that had recently started, and was helping her kids earn a chance at getting a scholarship to attend a better school in town. And the scholarship would even cover the bus ride there and back, which most people in Mukuru cannot afford. Being in her home was a shock to me, but I got a lot of strength and willingness, from seeing her dignity and her strength. Feeling sorry for myself stopped that day, and I got willing to just start from where I was and do the best I could to get my own life back on track and appreciate every little good thing that was there to help me. Because where I live, we have asphalt streets, we have gutters to carry away rainwater, we have flush toilets and clean air and free public schools for everyone and a safety net and electric lights and vaccinations and the right to vote and the freedom to marry or not marry and a postal service and 12-step meetings and religious freedom, and we have the internet. I was so sick of being in the hospital and the co-pays were killing me, but my God, we have hospitals. So that was my shift. And it grew to this huge positive wave in me of appreciation of the good things that coexisted in my world with all the hard stuff. And in time, the hard stuff passed. They told me that my body wasn't going to heal, but it did heal. And I got work again, and I met the guy who I'm now married to, and life slowly got sweeter and easier. For now, right? Oh, and by the way, the families who we went to Africa to help, we did help them to get to safety. And they got asylum eventually in the US, and now they work and they go to school, and it took a while to recover emotionally, but they are some of the happiest people I know. They express gratitude every time we speak for what they have, for the safety and love that surrounds them. So the commenter at the beginning of this video, who I mentioned, who said, "What if there was nothing good?" I just say, there was always something good. And like my friends from Kenya, we can always begin from where we are and let it in. If you're ready to change your perspective on your life story and heal brain dysregulation while you're at it, it helps to follow the daily practice that I teach for free, Writing Fears and Resentments, followed by simple meditation. It's all in the link you'll find below in the discussion section, along with a link to my full course, Healing Childhood PTSD. And if you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button and be sure to subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you again in a few days.